Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I have the pleasure of hosting an incredible personality on our podcast, Dr. Michael Nuccitelli. Dr. Nuccitelli needs no introduction. He has 35 years of experience in mental health and psychology, a renowned New York State licensed psychologist, and a celebrated cyber psychology researcher, an online safety instructor who specializes in various psychology domains. And the list goes on. In 2009, he finalized iPredator, a concept that explores the details of online psychology and the eventuality of aggression and deception in cyberspace. He's been educating the masses and advising common people as well as authorities regarding online malpractices such as cyberbullying and online safety. So, a very warm welcome to TekRevol's podcast series, Technology for a Change. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you for joining us today. I would love to have the audience, get to know a little bit more about your background. What have you been up to? How did you decide you wanted to get into this line in the first place?
Sure. Well, my doctoral degree is in clinical psychology. I have been passionate about psychology since I was a child. In my life, starting around 17, I won't go into actually how old I am, but it's been many years, decades that I've worked in the behavioral healthcare system. I've worked with mental retardation, developmental disabled, schizophrenia, basically everything ranging on the continuum for psychological dysfunctioning. Presently, by day, I have my own group practice. We're called MN Psychological Services here in the New York City area. And I not only do I treat the chronically mentally ill, those that suffer from schizophrenia, schizoaffective, severe bipolar disorder, but I also supervise other psychologists and certified social workers who also work with the chronically mentally ill. That is my day job. After work and on the weekends, which we're going to talk about today, which I've been doing for the last decade, is when I do all my research related to iPredator, the cyber psychological concept, as well as volunteering. I have volunteered for the last decade, providing free confidential advice to those folks who've been victimized online. So that's me in a nutshell here in Brooklyn.
The concept of iPredator.
Sure. Well, iPredator is, as I said, I wrote iPredator after I realized, boop, the light bulb, where would the criminal go or the pedophile go or anybody that's looking to harm anybody is to go to an environment where you can hide. So iPredator is a global concept that makes up 8 different types of online aggressors. And thank you for asking.
8
And I'll
kinds.
give those 8 to you real quick. First, the pediatric manifestation of iPredator is cyberbullying. In my concept and in most, those that specialize working with children, cyberbullying is a pediatric phenomenon. It is child-on-child cyber attacks. The adult forms of cyberbullying would be cyber harassers, internet trolls, and cyber stalkers. Then we have cyber criminals, cyber terrorists, and then the most deviant and perverse, the darkest of the iPredators are your online child predators and online child pornography consumers and distributors. Those 8 make up the global concept of iPredator. And real quickly, if I may, there are 3 criteria to know whether you or somebody you're dealing with is an iPredator. It's very simple. I'm not a very intelligent man, although I try to be today talking with you and others. 3 criteria. 1, the use of information communication technology to harm somebody. Number 2 is a self-awareness that you're causing harm using information technology. Now that one, not to go legal eagle or attorney, my old forensic psychology, but there's mitigating factors such as there are children, when they cyberbully other children, they actually believe that they're just kidding. They truly developmentally don't understand the harm they're causing the other child. Then you do have some folks that truly suffer from a psychiatric illness where they don't understand the harm and devastation that they're causing. But criteria two, a self-awareness. The vast majority of cyber attackers, iPredators, are fully aware. So we have the use of information technology, a self-awareness of causing harm using technology, and number three, the creation and information implementation of what I call cyber stealth or online deception. Online deception is used pretty much anytime you're trying to attack somebody online. Goodness gracious. Deception, online deception is when we're dealing with people in online dating sites. And you know what? I'm not 6 foot, I'm 6'1", and I'm not 200 pounds, I'm 180 pounds. It is natural for humans to practice deception. I mean, that is part of evolution. What does a male peacock do to show the female peacock? He spreads his wings to try to make himself look forward. We as humans, we do the same thing. But online deception, cyberspace, when it is done for nefarious, malevolent reasons, that is one of the three criteria of making up an iPredator. So if you fit those three and you do those repeatedly, you are an iPredator.
Have you been doing the consultations before the inception of iPredator? Is that something you read?
No, well, before iPredator, again, I really, not to date myself, but I am the tail end of baby boomer, first year of X generation. So when I was a child, I grew up and we didn't have technology. Goodness gracious, it wasn't until my early teenage years where cell phones were the size of a shoebox. I mean, so I didn't grow up with technology. To me, early on in my college years, I was fascinated with what's called forensic psychology or criminal psychology. Right. Incredibly fascinated with the psychopath, the sociopath, access to personality disorders. So very early on in my career, in fact, back in 2006, 2005, is when I really became fascinated with what I call the dark side of human consciousness. Hence, I wrote a concept, which is free to download and read at the website called Dark Psychology. Back then, I was also, as a forensic psychologist, part-time. I was working in the court systems, in family court, criminal court, civil court, doing forensic assessments. And it wasn't until, well, again, 2008, 2009, having studied the psychopath, studying the pedophile, studying, the deviant and the perverse, which some would call the evil, I realized, and this is when the bulb went off, is if I was someone who is looking to attack, to exploit, and to harm others, where better to go? Cyberspace. And that is when the bulb went off. And I started writing down information slowly but surely. And that's when I created iPredator. Because online, as you and your viewers know, I can completely hide my identity.
Absolutely.
And matter of fact, in 2022 is most of the times, other than online child pornography and online sexual predation of children, there's no accountability. So I can basically go online and I can character assassinate you, your company, I can target your family. And unless you show serious negative consequences from me targeting you, there's nothing you can do.
How does iPredator come into play?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's understanding, let's start off with what cyber psychology is. Again, I am a psychologist trained. That's what my doctoral degree is.
Right.
So I would have to say, even though, we can say Dr. Mike is a cyber psychologist. Oh, by the way, you can call me Michael, by the way. You don't have to say
sure.
Nuccitelli.
I hope I pronounced that right. Yeah.
No, well, however you'd like. Michael is just, all my patients call me Dr. Mike because Nuccitelli is a little bit difficult. But cyber psychology is essentially the study of human behavior as it relates to information technology. Now, as part of information technology, obviously the internet and social media are the two pieces. But going forward, which it isn't happening yet, which is important for technology companies, is understanding that going forward, cyber psychology is going to need to understand and examine virtual reality and artificial intelligence. Now, those two aspects here in 2022, we know little to nothing about because it's so new. And goodness gracious, as you know, the information age only began in the late 1970s. So we
Absolutely.
are dealing with a period of history that could invariably go centuries, and we are at the very beginning. So we are the proverbial guinea pigs for a century down the road when they look back and they laugh
Absolutely.
and see how archaic and how primitive we were in terms of how we deal with information communication technology.
Do we have enough information, enough knowledge from the past years of the internet? Or, like you said, we're still at that early age where you can't really draw conclusions?
Well, let's just say, again, going back to cyber psychology is the study of information technology. My expertise, now, just like psychology, okay, psychology is the study of human behavior. Cyber psychology is the study of human behavior in relationship to information technology. So when we think of that, and this is for any tech company, anybody, which I believe, should have at least a consulting cyber psychologist, if not one on staff, not only to deal with what's being developed by the tech company, but also to deal with those folks that are working day and night to develop those programs. But a cyber psychologist, as well as a psychologist, the study of human behavior is looking at cognitive, affective, behavioral, and perceptual. So cognitive aspects are the thinking aspects, affective are the feeling, behavioral are the actions, and then to me, where my passion is understanding is perceptual, which is my interpretation of what I'm doing online. And if we have a little bit of time later, because it's very important and is probably the strongest psychological concept I have, in addition to iPredator, is odor. Offline distress dictates online response, which that is a show in and of itself, but maybe we can talk a little bit about that at a later time. Offline distress dictates online response. And essentially, and thank you, by the way, for letting me bring that up because it's so important. Because essentially, that is the cyber psychology. Now, let's first start. What is the definition of cyberspace? Cyberspace is an abstract, artificial, digital universe. It's not real. But to us humans, us Homo sapiens, slowly but surely, we're beginning to identify this environment as an actual real environment, but it's not. So when you take into consideration what people are doing online, and goodness gracious, I still can't explain it yet, is for some reason, the psychology of the way people interpret and perceive what's going online is very different than what they do offline. Offline distress dictates online response means whatever my psychological functioning, what's ever going on offline, I believe, I can't prove it yet, directly affects what I do online and how I perceive and interpret what I see, experience online. All right. So, for instance, if I am angry, if I'm in financial distress, if I'm in arguments with my boss, with my wife, my loved ones, if I am depressed, if I am intoxicated, if I am under the influence of mood, mind, if I'm internet addicted, all of those, I believe, are factors that relate to how I interpret online. Okay.
Absolutely. How I perceive things.
Information. There is only, at least in 2022, there's only 3 ways that we manage and understand information. We can compile information, we can disseminate information, and we can exchange information. That is the triad. That's the only 3 ways that we can deal with information. And that's going to be like that at least for the next century. I mean, I don't know.
Absolutely. We don't see that changing.
Could be, but My interpretation, again, Oder says the psychology, however my psychological functioning is offline, I believe directly impact that ability is what I'm doing online.
We are a tech company. We see things. I mean, we try to leverage that for businesses, create social awareness and impact. A lot of entrepreneurs that we're working with want to be able to do that, which is why we wanted to have you here today. And we want to try to understand how technology and using it for good, technology for change, how can that improve an individual's understanding of these
Excellent
different
question.
subjects?
Thank you for asking, because I spend my entire waking life, whether doing interviews or research, on the dark side. And I've had folks say, well, Dr. Mike, what do you want us to turn off the internet? And the reality is, no, I love the internet. I love technology. I love everything I do when it comes to technology. Goodness gracious, all my patient notes, my electronic medical record is done online. What we're doing right now is on the internet. So the benefits of technology far outweigh the detriments, okay? It's just what I'm trying to do is to create awareness, because what I've learned in the last, 11 years of volunteering, in addition to educating others, is we are ignorant. And what is the definition of ignorance? Is not knowing, okay? Could we say there's denial? Let's just say part of the human condition is that unless you're getting cyber attacked, unless you're getting attacked, you or a loved one, to you, it's not relevant. But what I'm trying to inspire others to understand, both technology companies as well as the community in general, we live in the information age. Goodness gracious, children, not just obviously adults as well, but children, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, what are they doing? They're online. And now we're starting to be introduced, even more than introduced, dealing with internet addiction, online gaming disorder, okay, online deception. But internet addiction itself is something that we have yet to start really dealing with. So going forward, it is paramount for tech companies to, I hate to say, to allocate a portion of their operating expenditures to educating their consumer base and to educating the general consumer in general. I mean, not to get into marketing, my friend, but it's called social cause marketing. It's going out there and providing educational content for cyberbullying. For adults, the big one is cyber stalking and being internet trolled. That in and of itself would make such a huge difference if private companies spent time trying to educate online users about online safety and staying safe.
That needs to definitely be done. I mean, we have these check marks every website we go. Do you accept these cookies? Do you accept that maybe this platform could expose you to, being stalked or cyberbullying? Do you accept these terms and conditions, or do you want to learn more about them? And I feel like, I feel like it should be there. Obviously, you just mentioned how kids are now born with smartphones, being online, and they're exposed to these screens. I mean, and they know how to, you may have taken some time to, just be fluent with the smartphones, but these kids, they understand what that cross means. You close that window, how to deal with ads. I mean, the games that are now on there, advertising, which is, one of the reasons why a lot of these ads just pop up. So do you think it's a good idea to actually create a new account for your child, or do they use their parents' accounts to
I think obviously every parent has different beliefs, every primary caregiver. But what I do believe is that parent, primary care, the adults need to be heavily involved. Okay.
Heavily.
It is important to set boundaries, but at the same time, it's understanding that children, just from a developmental standpoint, when a child, both females, mature a little bit quicker than males, a little bit earlier. So let's say anywhere from the age of 11 all the way up to 17 or 18 is when a child begins puberty. And when a child begins puberty, the child goes from the parent of being the center of their universe is what they identify with, to now it's no longer the parents, it is now the peer group. And that is the process of individuation. Once the child goes through teen years and they hit early adulthood, then from a developmental psychology standpoint, they are now supposed to be individuated. Okay. So, but let's say for us men, it tends to be late 20s, if not early 30s. But as I said, it's understanding children from a developmental standpoint. This is when their self-identity is being formed. And what do children have today? Again, from the moment they get up to they go to bed, is they have a mobile device. Today's society is the first, and it sounds a little bit silly, but it's true. It's not in the DSM yet. It's called Nomophobia. Nomophobia. I don't know if you've heard of that. It sounds a little silly, but I've actually, in my volunteer work, I've helped parents who have, had children that have experienced. I've also, a couple of years back, had an adult who was nomophobic. But it's an individual who experienced tremendous anxiety or a panic attack because they cannot find their mobile device or they cannot connect to a Wi-Fi. They can't find connectors. Nomophobia. Now, as silly as that is real. There are actually,
it is.
Yes, there are people that are suffering tremendous anxiety because they can't find their mobile device. And in reality, what I'm asking people to do is not turn it off, but occasionally put it down. Go outside. Do something other than being online. Not turn it off, just chill out for a little bit.
Some of the, if we talk about the top 10 ideas to actually develop apps or games, they're usually now trying to focus on either, I would say, tracking your activity in the sense where or you're aware of your screen time. And you're basically reminded, hey, okay, you've exceeded, you can actually set yourself boundaries. So one of those, and VPNs are among the top 5 apps to actually develop. Tracking your behavior is also something that's on the rise. I feel that can help.
I would have to respectfully disagree if the tracking is left up to me. So what you're telling me, when I say you, I'm talking about technology.
Yep.
If technology is going to let me know that I've been online for an hour longer than whatever that, I'm just going to turn it off. So when left to my own devices, that's part of the human condition is, this is why we have alcohol and drug. This is why we have compulsive, dependency and addiction, is because when we like something, we are going to do it, smell it, eat it, drink it, until proverbially we drop dead. So tracking certainly is helpful, particularly when it comes to parents and the primary caregivers as it relates to children. But when it comes to the adult who I am making my own decision, that it's a good idea. I should be applauding it because I'm a psychologist. I'm also somebody who understands dealing with people on a daily basis. And I'm not talking just about the schizophrenic. I'm talking about just regular folks that I've helped with in my volunteer work. It's very difficult to put parameters on something that you are enveloped by.
How does being a cyber psychologist, what are some of the key factors that we could consider while making products for, essentially teens and adults, while developing apps and games, or even websites? What are some of the things that we should factor in?
That's a good one. That was almost, and I also, when you had sent me questions, I was like, that's almost philosophical, which when we talk about factors, again, we're talking about, when you're developing websites, apps, whatever it may be, first and foremost, its understanding is human error. Okay. The vast majority of those, obviously can happen randomly, but the vast majority of online users who are hacked, who are, cyber stalked, who are bullied on, Most online aggression, assaults, cyber attacks occur due to human error. So it's understanding as a developer is how does human error play a role in terms of this individual, whatever you're developing. So we are, trial and error creatures. What is learning? Learning is understanding that we are going to make mistakes. And from making mistakes, we learn what? Not to commit that mistake again. That's what all learning is based on. So when it comes to developing, it's understanding that human error is going to play a role. And second, because I know we're going to talk a little bit about online safety, is personal information. Is when you're developing website, whatever it may be, it's understanding that humans, us Homo sapiens, if we're not careful, again, odor, offline distress dictates online response. And then the iPredator, the skilled iPredator, the skilled online aggressor, whether it be the online child predator, the cyber stalker, the cyber criminal, he or she is looking for personal information about you. They will spend days, weeks, if not months, studying you, studying your small business, studying your large company, studying the employees, and going to their social media accounts, going to your blog, going to your website, and doing what? Essentially data mining. An individual with a little bit of skill, they can compile an incredible amount of data information about you. What are your proclivities, what you like, what your dislikes are. That is what you have to understand. You, all of us. So it is the direct correlate is as little personal information I disclose, I share online, the lower probability I have of being cyber attacked. Not to say that you become completely, inoculated from it, but you reduce the probability greatly.
Right. So it's more about maybe, due diligence on a social media site. Excellent. Where you, just let people in that you've actually met in life, that know friends of friends, and or have mutual friends.
Perhaps. Yes, I have worked with folks online, and not to castigate them or pass judgment, but just real Facebook. Facebook has, and you and I would probably laugh, but Facebook has privacy settings. I have volunteered and I have helped folks who had Facebook settings and didn't even know that there were privacy settings and had their Facebook profiles set to public and sitting and talking about, things, events that they're going to. That is, so we call it ignorance. Do we call it naivete? Do we call it poor online safety? To me, it's understanding human error. Some of the most intelligent people, that I've helped have committed some of the most egregious online safety errors that you almost say, what are you thinking, huh? But so intelligence, there's no correlate between, book smarts and capacity to practice online safety.
Right. I see. So, some of the key takeaways I get from that is, of course, due diligence, making sure the information you have for the public is something that you are actually satisfied with or happy with, or content. Back to technology, and during the pandemic, when everyone was locked down, how did you leverage this technology to connect with your clients? I mean, I'd love to have some.
Well, during the pandemic, yes, because here in the New York City, particularly in New York City, the Brooklyn area, we had an incredibly high rate of COVID, the pandemic. Here in New York City, with the quarantine and back and forth. But there was a period of time in the beginning for almost a year, which was beneficial. I personally still went into the facility to see my patients. But I offered as well. So some of our therapists actually via computer did what's called teletherapy. So they would use web conferencing, particularly, I think it was Zoom. I'm not quite sure exactly, because they could certainly use whatever web conferencing they want to where they would actually connect with the patients at the facility. So we had a separate office where there was a laptop there. and they would sit there and they would have session with the patient. And that is how technology benefited, particularly during the COVID pandemic, where everything was quarantined.
So how much of this is, I mean, does it actually exist, or how do you identify that? I mean, obviously we wouldn't want you to compromise any real life story without, or revealing any information. We wouldn't want any of that. But how have you seen it affect an individual?
Well, I have seen, particularly when we talk a little bit about nomophobia, we talk about internet addiction. I helped a lady some time ago. I'll kind of mix the details. But as I said, she literally had a panic attack. She ended up calling me because she couldn't find her mobile device, an actual panic attack. And for those who are listening or watching that are behavioral healthcare professionals, a panic attack is something quite serious. Turns out, by the grace of God, she had called, and me being a psychologist, knowing what a panic attack is, I slowly assisted her to calm down. Turns out she found the mobile device, I think it was her iPhone, fell behind the rear well of her car in her garage. So she was able to find it. But when you think about panic, okay, when you think about anxiety, I come from a world of a pre-information age world where panic disorder, a person is experiencing a panic attack because of their abusive husband, their abusive father, or something that travesty occurred, real anxiety. But to experience true panic because you can't locate a mobile device, that really hits home just how important technology is to all of us. Now, obviously, that's a severe form. I have also, in my volunteer work, I've helped people, and I wouldn't wish it, my friend, on my worst enemy, sextortion. And what is sextortion? And obviously, revenge porn is when an individual is able to access sexually themed content about you, okay? That can either be written, audio, visual. By far the most dangerous is video. And in every interview I do, when I'm asked, what is your 2 big online safety tips? Obviously, as little personal information that you share, the better. But number 2, most importantly, and you hopeless romantic out there, those that are married, those that are engaged or in love, you're really not going to like what I have to say. But the sexually themed content, the erotic information, the provocative content that you share with your loved one online, goodness gracious, God forbid if the two of you end up in an adversarial relationship, whether that be a breakup, whether that be a divorce. If there is sexually themed content that was exchanged in the past, guess what? It's called revenge porn. And this is when your enemy now takes that information, that sexually themed content, and shares it on social media, sends it to your job, sends it to your loved ones, sends it to your religious, or sends it to everyone. And you were left there to deal with this content where, as I said, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. That is revenge porn. Sextortion is, and this happens a lot with children, is where I'm able to obtain sexually themed content about you or your child, or let's say you as the child. I now come online and say to you, unless you provide me more sexual content via video on Zoom or StreamYard or whoever, send me more, I will send it to your parents or your school. And that is sexual blackmail. So revenge porn and sextortion are the 2 biggest types of what iPredators are doing today.
So yeah, you mentioned online safety, and you've also touched upon how the audience can actually protect themselves online. But what does one do to tackle this situation if this online security has been compromised.
It's unfortunate, my friend. It's very difficult. We are at the beginning of a period of history. Remember, I said early on, they're going to look back at us and they're going to laugh and say how antiquated, archaic, and primitive we are. Today, at least here in the United States, and from my understanding, most industrialized nations, when you're cyber attacked, whether it be, again, cyber stalked, identity theft through cybercrime, you are to report it to the police. Now, here in the United States, police departments are just beginning to put their word and having cybercrime units. So you are to report it to get a police report. Obviously, if it's identity theft, it's dealing with your banks. But when it comes to the vast majority of cyber attacks, at least from my experience, occur in the legal world. Obviously, cybercrime, online child predation, online child pornography is illegal. But most cyber attacks, when it comes to character assassination, cyberbullying, I hate to say it, it's legal. Okay. And it's very difficult to identify sometimes who the cyber attacker is. Oftentimes, particularly when it comes to cyberbullying and most cyber stalking, you know who the attacker is. But unless you're able to show in a court of law negative consequences, there's nothing you can do. Absolutely. Here in the United States, it's called the First Amendment, freedom of speech. So now you have to somehow prove hate speech. We don't have, which we do need to have, it's called criminal defamation. That is not a legal statute that exists here in the United States. But we need it because it's only going to progress. So when we're dealing with online safety, it is, again, it's not going online. It's not talking about and bantering others, but it's understanding, okay, everything that you put online, what you compile, what you share, and what you disseminate, it doesn't evaporate. You can delete it, but as we know, once something you disseminate in cyberspace online, it stays there. You can delete it, but it's not gone. And it's understanding that.
True.
And when we talk about odor, offline distress dictates online response. If you've had a bad day, if you're angry, if you're under the influence, if you are whatever in a negative state and you go online and you engage in harsh words or harsh video exchanges with others, goodness gracious, just know there is a predatory troll out there, if not the person you're arguing, that can use it against you. And I have volunteered, and I am not exaggerating. I am not hyperbolizing. I have helped people who have actually lost jobs because the troll sent content to their job about exchanges that were had or about information that the online user had shared on social media. Okay. It's incredible what's being done today online.
I'm sure the audience would appreciate your advice on how to basically tackle either of these situations, identifying these predators, right? And also brings us to the responsibility of product owners and how they should basically engage more in awareness.
And if I say real quickly, I know we don't have much time. It's understanding, particularly because when it comes to online victimization dynamics, I can't tell you how many folks I've helped where they have been told by their loved ones, by the system, by police, by court systems, and which worse is by loved ones, is when they've talked about being cyber attacked, they have been told that you're exaggerating, you're being melodramatic, you're playing the victim, turn it off, walk away, block them, forget about it. And it's understanding, my friend, that is impossible to do. Why? We live in the information age. You can't turn off the internet anymore. Maybe in a before 2010, you could do it, but today you can't. Most folks that I know of, not all, but most adults that I know of, certainly children, but most adults, from the moment they're up to the moment they go to bed, most adults today have to deal with technology in some way, shape, manner, or form. myself, I'm using technology from almost the time I get up to the time I go to bed. I do love to bike ride, so I purposely put the technology down so I can go to the fitness, so I can go to the boardwalk and bike ride. But it's understanding we are enveloped by technology, and that's only going to continue.
So that's where I mean, you mentioned artificial intelligence initially. People are now using that to detect, basically fraud.
Yes.
Whether it's identity theft, whether it's an invalid sign in from your. So a lot of these, there is a lot of application to it. Um, Certainly, the human error aspect, where you said it starts with human error, and that is something that I feel like us as developers need to understand that customer journey a little bit more. Where are there's these cracks where we could actually fall to error. That's certainly something that we would want to keep in mind. And once again, thank you so much, Michael. It
Thank
has
you.
been enlightening. At least as a strategist, I will now specifically make sure that we are able to apply, some of the things we've learned in today. And I would be in touch with you to learn a little bit more about that.
Oh,
I mean,
thank you for having me
want to
on.
make
Very much appreciated.
I appreciate your time. You have a wonderful day with us. And guys, the audience, thank you so much for your time. We're going to be getting on, again, similar. A lot of entrepreneurs, people with passion about what they do and how they want to impact society. We'll be inviting more people on as great as Dr. Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Okay, yes, there's plenty. We could, again, no rush, but if you ever want to do anything on just internet addiction alone, that is something that I'm thinking that because of the pandemic, we're going to see a huge increase in internet addiction. But if you want to do another show, cyber stalking, just cyberbullying, again, there's 8 typologies. I can always make myself available. Thank you for having me on.
We will make sure that we are able. I mean, because this is a vast topic, right? We will certainly next time be able to highlight one particular theme that you want to talk about.
Sure.
Right?
Again, whatever you want to talk about.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I know you wanted to talk about cyber psychology, so I tried to put that in there, but we end up, which is, talking about the dark side. But then again, people love to hear about the dark side. I hate to say
they do, and I mean, I just feel like tech companies need to now focus a little bit more on how to basically avoid that, or how to bring awareness at least to the people who aren't aware of this.
Most certainly.
Or maybe to be alarmed at all times.
And once you guys send me the link, I'll obviously share it through my social accounts and show it to some of my high functioning patients. But thank you very much. Sure. It was an honor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's definitely humbling to have you on our show. Do stay in touch. Do stay in tune, guys. We'll be bringing in such similar interesting topics that we could cover. And hopefully at the end of the day, it is technology for a change, for the better. Bye-bye. Take care.